What's going on, everybody? Today I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about Map 7 as the beta testing for it is coming to a close. Now, because this is still the beta servers here, keep in mind that everything you are about to see is subject to change. We don't know if the final map layout is going to look like this, but that is something that I want to spend some time talking about. The map layout, the overall time that it's going to take to get through this place, the overall difficulty of the enemies and nodes on this map, and I also want to touch a little bit on the donations. Even though we do not know what the donation costs are going to be yet, I do still have some thoughts about that. Okay, so let's start out with Section 1 here. And Section 1, you can see it's this kind of crossing over of paths here. And I think most people are still going to have, kind of an easy to navigate path as we kind of figure out the best ways to get through the map. But it's kind of interesting that the paths kind of cross over like that. One piece of negative feedback that I have about this initial section is that when you first start out, you're like this on the map. When you first join, you're pretty close in here, and it can be pretty dangerous to accidentally click on one of these nodes. I've done that before, and yeah, it kind of sucked. The other thing is that you can see, because it's kind of tightly packed in here, that node to click on for cable is like completely hidden. I really don't like when Kabam has it set up like that. A good way to, a good little tip if you're ever stuck in a situation like this, and I'd recommend for anyone running Map 7 to do this, is to click on this little fold-out menu thing here, and then click on the portal button. That'll at least kind of give yourself some room, and then you can, kind of navigate around a little bit easier without accidentally clicking on one of the nodes, until you get a little bit farther away. But anyway, onto this Section 1 here. I think it's fine for the most part, the way the paths kind of cross over, and it seems like you don't need all 10 players to get through this thing. It seemed like I believe there were 7 different paths. Oh man, now I'd have to like really go back and count it. But I think there was 3 on each side, and then 1 that kind of has to go down this little area right here. These 3 fights, and then all of the different portals, they all kind of head over to this little center island, and this center island, this is the first mini boss island, I guess you'd call it. And there's actually 2 mini bosses to the mini boss, believe it or not. And these are kind of easy fights. They're just really long fights. The nodes on them, they're just stacked in terms of health, plus 300% health. And then you can see there's also one of those all champion classes, but X class reduce their attack by 50%, and that's random. So it doesn't have to be the the opposite class type or anything like that. In this case, it actually is. So you can see these fights, they would take a long time to get through, but they're pretty standard fights. There's nothing really making them complicated other than it's just going to be a little bit of a long fight. Kind of like a Realm of Legend, like a mini Realm of Legend style. I think those champions had something like 270,000 HP on day 5 in here, so yeah. Alright, so this mini boss, this is the first mini boss of the map, which is Omega Red, and I imagine that we're going to have some type of rotating mini bosses for this map as well, just like we do for some of the other maps in Alliance Quest, but for the beta testing we only have Omega Red. And he has an aggression regeneration node, meaning that you want to stay a little bit aggressive on him in order to keep those healing stacks down, or you want to use champions that heal block, or you would think that you'd want to use champions that have some type of healing reversal like Void. However, Kabam's also given him this Lionheart node, which means anytime you apply some type of healing reversal like Petrified debuffs, you're actually going to be taking damage yourself, and you're not going to be reversing the healing of Omega Red. So you need to use champions that heal block, or just have high DPS or something like that. I was able to take this fight down with just some standard high DPS champions like Stark Spidey, like Star-Lord. I even went in here with Rocket, with Rocket Raccoon, but that was not too realistic. I did that on like the final night of testing. Went in here with full suicides. I boosted up it like crazy. And yeah, we just threw a couple grenades at this guy and he dropped. Did the same thing with Domino. It was pretty satisfying actually. But yeah, the best way to take down this Omega Red really is to use a robot champion, because of the way his spores stack up at a much slower rate if you're using a robot champion, and hopefully or ideally that robot champion would also have a heal block. The two best that I could think of would be Sentinel and Dark Hawk. So both of those champions would have a relatively easy time getting through this fight. Even if your Sentinel wasn't awakened, if you just had somebody in your group with like a 6-star Sentinel at rank 1, I'm sure you'd be totally fine using that Sentinel to get through this guy. Just kind of spamming special ones. Alright, so then after that mini-boss is taken down, there's these 4 different portals that spread out for Section 2. And there's some things that I like and some things that I don't like about this Section 2. First off, it's pretty easy to see that there are actually 10 different paths in Section 2. So everybody kind of has their own path. And if you look at the number of nodes on each path, it's basically just 5 energy. Which is cool. So, once you have 5 energy and you're in Section 2, you just kind of go through your path, and that's pretty much it, Each of these paths just has 5. I mean, technically if you're the one that portals over first, you'd have basically 6 energy to move over to like the next mini-boss over here. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. And I like that. I like that it's a more straightforward layout versus if we look at map 6 in Section 2, I don't know, it's just not that it's difficult to navigate. I mean, I've been doing it for I don't even know how many months at this point, over a year. But I do just like this straightforward layout of this Section 2 here. I don't know, it's just something pleasing about it when you're looking at it, and you know exactly where to go, even when it's a brand new map. It's something that I actually enjoy. The downside about this, though, is that because there are 10 different paths, I do think it's going to have a negative impact on alliances that are international based. I think alliances that are in like North America are going to have a good time with this Section 2, or at least the players that are in North America, because even North American-based alliances tend to have at least a few different international players from different regions around the world. And the way it works right now in Map 6 is, those international players, they usually dump their energy in Map 6 in like the first section, and then it's time for them to go to sleep, So they go to sleep and wake up, and by the time they wake up, we're kind of like halfway navigated through Section 2, and they kind of just hop on. They just kind of share a path with somebody. I don't know if this is going to make things easier or harder, or possibly just leave it the same, because like I said, it is just 5 energy to get through these paths. So maybe it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Since you don't need all 10 players for the first section, they could just kind of dump 3 of their energy and then still be able to hop into Section 2 whenever they wake up, type of thing. That might be totally fine. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the way that Kabam sets up the links, which oh man, let me tell you guys, I'm really not a fan of linked nodes. I get that it's there to require us to kind of work together and take down different enemies to take down these nodes and stuff like that, or take down the links, but I think the linked nodes in these maps are just not very fun. I think linked nodes leading up to like a mini boss, just so that it does require people to kind of take down different paths, I think that's fine. But if Kabam is going to set it up so that like all of these different fights are just like crazy linked up, and you only get to move like one time, and then somebody on another path that move one time, like depending on how it's set up, which on the beta, by the way, there are no linked nodes, but depending on how it's set up, that would get pretty frustrating. So hopefully Kabam doesn't make it all crazy like that. The less linked nodes, the better. And honestly, we could do this with no linked nodes, and I would be totally happy with that. I don't think they actually add much in terms of difficulty. They kind of just make things more annoying than anything. But anyway, let's get back onto the map here. So we've got 10 different paths, and they all kind of lead up to the second mini boss, which is Omega Red once again. It's pretty much the exact same fight, except he's a little bit more stacked, and this recovery is a little bit higher. His total HP is a bit higher and everything too, so the regeneration is significantly stronger. The second fight here, the second mini boss, was much more difficult to bring down using only a DPS champion. I think for the second one, you really need to have like a solid counter to this guy. So again, those robots that apply heal block are much better, and a higher DPS robot too. OG Vision is capable of taking these fights, but it's going to be a very long fight. So All right, then after that, everybody kind of hits this teleport pod here, and once again, you are kind of thrown to either side of the map. There are actually only 3 portals this time, and that's because this portal that you see here, letter C, once you get on that, you actually take a portal over to this other side here, and that's how you get to this other island on the right side of the map. So there are 10 different paths here as well in the final section, and 10 paths in the final section is totally fine. That's what we have in map 6 right now. I see no issue with that, because by the time everybody, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what your sleep schedule looks like, as you get into this final section, you know, that's kind of the end of the map, right? People are going to have that time. They're going to have that energy, whether they went to sleep early in the map or late in the map. So yeah, the third section is totally fine when it comes to that. And again, I like that it's relatively straightforward. For the most part, you know, you can very easily see all of the different paths here. Maybe it's a little bit different for me since I've been playing on this beta for several hours at this point. I've probably put maybe like 10 hours, maybe even like 12 hours into the beta at this point. So yeah, it is pretty easy for me to see like all the different paths and everything. All right, so that's pretty much the map layout. Again, I think it's actually really good. I enjoy this map layout versus something like map 6 where it just kind of looks funky, you know. I enjoy the more like the aesthetics of this map layout are better, in my opinion, is what I'm trying to get out for map 7 compared to map 6. The 2 big concerns that I have is the section 2, where although I really like that it's everyone it's kind of good that everyone just gets their own path and everyone is responsible for what they need to get done, and it is only like 5 energy, so you know, you just save up some energy and you can kind of plow through it real easily and then be like, okay, that was my 5 energy, let's move on to section 3 kind of thing. I like that, but I am a little bit concerned that because there are 10 different paths, that it is going to have a negative impact on the international alliances. We'll have to see if that holds true. I think most of that has to do with whether the linked, like how bad the linked node situation is. If the linked nodes are bad, then yeah, it's gonna be a disaster for the international alliances. So hopefully Kabam just keeps the difficulty to the fights themselves and moves away from the whole linked node things. I can't stress that enough, how much I would love to see that from Kabam. Okay, but anyway, the section 2, you know, that was my one concern there with the map layout is the section 2 and the linked nodes pretty much. Other than that, I really like the map layout. All right, as far as time, how long do I think it's going to take to get through this map compared to map 6? Well, I counted the number of energy that's required to get through this place. In section 1, it's 54 energy. So basically 10 energy per player, right? If you have 10 players in here. Or wait, I'm sorry. Did I say 10 energy per player? I meant to say 5 energy per player. 5 energy per player if there's 10. If you have 10 players in map 7, which you're gonna need for map 7, right? 5 energy per player. You start out with 3. You know, you're gonna get through this first section in it's gonna take 3 hours just because there's a few people that are gonna have to use that like 6 energy versus 5, but. Yeah, the first section is not going to take very long to get through. The second section in total is 54 energy. So like I said, it's basically 5 energy per player once again, with, you know, a couple of extra nodes thrown in here that you know, just require you know, some players to use a 6th energy. But for the most part, it's 5 energy per player. And then section 3 is 53 energy. Hopefully I didn't miscount that. I think it's 54 for section 1, 54 for section 2, and 53 for the final section. Oh, and by the way, you do all meet at the mini boss here in the center. I didn't call it out initially when I was going over the map layout. But yeah, 53 energy for the final part here. And once again, it's pretty straightforward, where it's about 5 energy per player for each of the paths here. So yeah, it's really not too bad in terms of the energy costs. We're looking at about 16 energy per player. It's 161 energy in total. So yeah, 16 energy per player. You start the map with 3, right? So on average, it's about, you know, a 13-hour time frame of getting all of the energy that you would need to complete this map. Now, of course, it's always complicated with people's schedules and, like I said, international players and stuff like that. So, yeah, if everybody was located in the same area, if you all woke up at the same time and everything like that, 13 hours to get through it all. You could knock that thing out before anybody even goes to sleep at night. But yeah, it doesn't exactly work that way. But I looked at the energy that that I personally spent through Map 6. I don't know how many nodes and how many fights and stuff like that are in Map 6, but I did record a video going all the way through Map 6, and I'd actually I used 18 energy. I also kind of stay up later than the average player. Just because it does work out really well in my time zone. So I'm sure some players were using a little bit less. If I had to guess, it's probably the same energy cost between 6 and 7. But yeah, I mean 16 per player, I feel like that's reasonable enough in terms of time. Especially considering you start out with 3. The number of fights in here, there are 126 enemies in total, including all of the bosses. And 126 in total, divided by the 10 players that you'd have in here. It's basically 12 to 13 fights per player. Again, that video that I made but never uploaded when I was going through, I went through all of Map 6 right before the big changes happened. That's why I didn't upload it. I actually went through 13 fights, and I took down one of the mini bosses. That was one of the 13. So, yeah, it seems to be a pretty similar number of total fights in this place. I don't know if I took a higher number of fights than the average player in that one recording. I don't think I did. So yeah, it seems to be a pretty similar number of fights. So time-wise, it's pretty similar, except for the fact that these fights are a little bit more difficult, depending on the path that you're going up against. So the individual fights, in Map 6, something like 45 seconds to a minute, something like that. Here, it might be closer to like a minute and a half per fight, something like that. It's tough to say an average because some of the paths are super simple, super easy. Like this, there's a resistor path, and I went through with Ronin, and oh my god, dude, I shred this path so quickly. You just, as soon as you get your first stun, you stun lock the enemy, and they're dead, right? And because you're Ronin, and because they have all those buffs on themselves, your damage output is insane. And yeah, going through that path took, I don't know, all of like 3 minutes to go through the entire path. Then you have paths like this entire Spider-Verse path here, where you have Miles Morales, OG Spidey, all 4 different Spideys on that same path. And if you bring someone like Venom, then you're also going to just shred that path. It's not going to take you much time at all. Even on day 5 here, I think the highest HP that I saw in like a regular fight was upwards of about like 145,000, and that was for a high base HP enemy like Void that I found on the map. But the average enemy was significantly less than that, somewhere around like 100 to 126,000. So yeah, time-wise, it's not that much different versus Map 6. It's gonna be, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes longer per day or something like that you're spending in here. It is a difference. It certainly is a difference between Map 6, that's for sure. But it's really not as bad as what I initially thought. Initially, I thought it was going to take a lot longer to get through Map 7. When I first started testing around in this place, I was like, oh man, this is going to take, twice as long. If it takes 20 minutes a day to get through all of Map 6, it's going to take like 40 minutes a day to get through all of Map 7. But I think it's going to be a difference of like 20 minutes versus like 30 minutes or something like that. So really not too bad. Again, it really just depends on the linked nodes. Can't stress that enough. Please, Kabam, just scrap the whole link node system. I think so many people will be so happy about that. We still need a lot of players to get through the map, but I mean, what do the linked nodes actually offer, man? They're no good. They're no good. Just leave it like this without any links. Alright, unfortunately the beta actually did just shut down on me, so I'm gonna play you guys some of the footage when I was previously going through the place, and just finish up kind of my closing thoughts about Map 7. So, last thing I wanted to mention about the difficulty of the map. I think that it is going to be kind of a shock in terms of difficulty at first, and it certainly was for me, but once you start ranking up the right champions, then it actually becomes very doable. Start prioritizing some of your 5-star champions that are a little bit more unique and catered towards each path. No longer are we going to be able to all just go in and like all 10 players have the exact same setup, and you just rank up like Ghost Rider for AQ and then you're good, or Hyperion and then you're good, or something like that. No, now you're actually going to have to level up different champions for different paths. And I actually think that's really cool. It's a lot more fun that way. Not only is it a lot more fun to all kind of be ranking up different champions and have that little bit more of a unique roster for each player, but it's also more fun when you're opening up crystals and suddenly now some of these champions that previously you were very disappointed to see or just didn't really care about because you didn't have a need for them, now it's like, oh, cool, well, I could actually put this champion to use if I duplicate my 5-star Ronin. I wouldn't mind ranking him up a little bit just to, just for fun, even though honestly that path you could probably get through with a 4-star Ronin just because it's a stun lock path. But just for an example, right? There's other champions out there that suddenly become much more useful. Alright, that's pretty much it for my thoughts on difficulty. Kind of just to recap that real quick, I think it's going to be a little bit of a shock at first, but players will kind of ease right into it, and it won't be too bad. Maybe people won't be running 5 days of map 7 at first, but I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal. To be honest, I want to run 5 days of map 7. I like that it's a much lower pressure in Alliance Quest versus something like Alliance War, and it's kind of just fun being able to rank up different champions. Right now in Alliance War, I've been using the same champions for months. This is finally giving me a way to rank up new champions, so I really enjoy that. Alright, but last thing that I want to mention real quick is donation costs. I just said I want to run 5 days of map 7, but depending on what the donations are, that's not going to be possible. So I really hope that Kabam does not really increase donations. The resources required to get through map 7 are already going to be higher than what's needed to get through map 6. It is going to be a little bit more time consuming. Again, I don't think it's going to be that much more time consuming. It's not going to be more time consuming in terms of the energy that's required to get through. It's just that each individual fight is going to be slightly longer. At least until you kind of have your path down and you have the right champions ranked up. So initially it is going to feel a decent amount longer, and then it's going to kind of get, that additional time requirement is going to be lowered as time goes on. But no matter what, the enemies do have more HP in this place, so it is going to take a tiny bit more time at least. And the overall fights are a bit more difficult as well, so there will be an additional resource cost in terms of potions. So you are already spending more resources in this place, even if the donation costs were identical to what map 6 donations are. So I'm really hoping that we don't see a donation increase cost for map 7. In fact, I'm hoping that it stays the same as what map 6 is, and then maybe if Kabam, since map 6 is no longer like the ultimate map, maybe if Kabam either lowered map 6 donation costs by a tiny bit, which would kind of alleviate some of the stress that's going on to stay in alliances right now, if donation costs were lowered a little bit, or if Kabam, instead of not giving back any of the resources that you have to donate for map 6, if they give some of those resources back, that would also take away some of that pressure to be in an alliance. Because that is one thing that I've noticed a lot lately, is that more so than ever, there's a lot of players who are kind of just tired of the alliance experience and kind of are running solo. But maybe if it was a little bit easier to kind of cover the donation costs. I'm not asking for like a big change. I'm not asking for the cost to be lowered or anything like that. It's just that I do feel that players have kind of reached their limit in terms of what they can donate, especially with the increased resources for rank ups that has drained players a lot more in terms of gold. The only resource that I personally have a problem with is loyalty. Actually right now I don't have a problem with it, but if it increased in cost for map 7, then loyalty is something that would kind of lock me out as a player, just because I don't have a the conversion badge, so I don't have a way of donating loyalty with units, and there is no way to farm up additional loyalty. So that would be pretty annoying. But yeah, that's it for my thoughts. Again, we don't know what the donation costs are. I just wanted to give some feedback ahead of time before Kabam officially releases whatever numbers they're going to release. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Another super long video. Hopefully you guys don't mind these super long videos too much. Try my best to kind of condense them, but man, some of these subjects that I've been talking about recently, or just some of these videos kind of need to be on the longer side. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, let me know, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.